It had been 10 long years since my divorce, a time marked by solitude and the slow passing of days spent quietly, with no close connection to anyone. At 45, I had grown accustomed to the silence of my empty home and the nights that stretched on with a bittersweet weight of memory and regret. That Tuesday night, as I lay in bed, the exhaustion of the day wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. The house was as silent as ever, each familiar creak and murmur of the settling walls offering little comfort. But that night, the peaceful solitude was shattered by a soft, hesitant knock at the door. I sat up in the darkness, startled by the sound. Something felt different this time, an inexplicable urgency that made my heart skip a beat. Then I heard a gentle voice calling, "Mom." It was a whisper in the dark, tender and unmistakable. My eyes slowly adjusted as I rose and made my way to the door. When I opened it, I saw Adrien standing there. Although still in pajamas, it was clear that the clothes were now those of a young man of 25, no longer the small child I had once known. His expression was shy and uncertain, and it stirred a deep sense of protectiveness within me. I motioned him inside with a quiet, "Come in." He hesitated for just a moment before joining me in the small, familiar room. We settled together on the bed, with only a small space between us, a quiet reminder of both our closeness and the unspoken distance time had created. As I lay there, I could feel the warmth of his presence, a warmth that brought a gentle reassurance to my weary soul. I tried to ignore the rush of conflicting emotions that surged within me as I noticed the unmistakable signs that he had grown and changed with the years. His delicate, hesitant voice broke the silence once more as he softly said, "Sometimes, it's just too much." In that fragile moment, I reached out and rested my hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture meant to convey that I was there, that I understood his unspoken pain. He turned toward me and offered a heartfelt embrace, one that conveyed not a physical passion but a deep, familial tenderness. His arms wrapped around me firmly, and I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. There was something profoundly comforting about the closeness we shared, a closeness that spoke of years of memories, shared sorrows, and the unyielding bond between a parent and a child. I whispered, "I'm here." "I'm always here," though inside I felt a tumult of emotions. My heart raced with the intensity of our shared vulnerability, and I struggled to understand the overwhelming mix of protectiveness, regret, and a yearning for connection that stirred within me. As the night wore on, Adrien's quiet strength began to soothe the raw edges of my loneliness. His eyes grew heavy, and soon he drifted into a peaceful sleep, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Even as I lay awake, the memory of his gentle embrace lingered. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, there can be a spark of unexpected comfort. Morning arrived slowly, the soft glow of sunrise filtering through the curtains. I found him still sleeping peacefully beside me, his face serene in the early light. I lingered for a moment, admiring the transformation of the young man before me, a person who had weathered the challenges of life and still carried an air of innocence and hope. I carefully rose from the bed, not wanting to disturb his rest, and made my way to the kitchen. The cool morning air and the ritual of preparing breakfast offered a small measure of solace and time to reflect. As I worked in silence, my thoughts raced. What had this night truly meant? Had the unexpected closeness been merely a moment of mutual comfort, or was it a sign that the deep wounds of isolation and grief were slowly beginning to heal? I did not have the answers yet, but one thing was certain, this was not just another lonely night. It was a turning point, a subtle invitation to acknowledge the importance of emotional intimacy and familial support in a life that had known too much solitude. In the quiet of that morning, I resolved to be more present, to listen to the silent calls of love and to cherish the bond that had been there all along, even when I thought I was alone. As the day unfolded, I felt a renewed determination to seek healing, to find ways to reconnect with the parts of myself that had been lost over the years. Adrien's quiet strength and unspoken understanding had reminded me that even after a decade of isolation, moments of grace can still emerge unexpectedly. And perhaps, in that delicate balance of vulnerability and resilience, I might finally learn to embrace a future filled with genuine connection, however uncertain it might be. This version transforms a single, charged moment into a deeply emotional narrative about rediscovering connection and the gentle power of familial love, free from any explicit language or unintended implications. A gentle unease stirred within me as I wrestled with the memories of the night before. In the quiet of early morning, I moved into the kitchen to gather ingredients for pancakes, a simple ritual meant to anchor me to normalcy. The soft clatter of utensils and the rhythmic stirring of batter filled the space, yet my mind remained adrift in a tide of conflicted emotions. A few minutes later, I noticed Adrien quietly emerging from behind the door. His eyes, still heavy with sleep, held a blend of weariness and cautious curiosity. "Morning," he murmured in a soft, measured tone. I replied with a tender smile, "Good morning, sweetheart," determined to greet the day with calm despite the lingering uncertainties that had taken root the previous night. As I flipped the pancakes, I became aware of Adrien's steady gaze. It was as though he was studying every movement, his eyes reflecting not just the light of the new day but also the echoes of our shared past and the silent questions that lay between us. There was a noticeable change in his demeanor. Usually quiet and reserved, this morning he appeared introspective, as if he was gathering the courage to bridge an invisible gap between us. I placed a plate of pancakes in front of him and said, "Enjoy," my voice gentle but edged with a hint of melancholy. For a fleeting moment, our eyes met, a moment that spoke of unspoken thoughts and feelings too deep for words. In his eyes, I saw a mixture of admiration and sorrow, a silent acknowledgement of the hardships we had both endured. Each glance felt like a plea for understanding, a desire to connect beyond the boundaries of everyday routine. The warm aroma of pancakes mingled with the soft light of the morning, and yet beneath the comfort of these familiar details lay a palpable tension. As we sat at the table, the usual ease of our morning was replaced by an unspoken emotional gravity. Adrien's gaze drifted often, as if he were searching for something, perhaps the remnants of a simpler time, or perhaps the reassurance of a bond that had been quietly shifting in its depth. Throughout breakfast, the silence between us was not empty but filled with a subtle dialogue of glances and half-smiles. I found myself acutely aware of every small movement, every sigh, as if our shared meal had become a delicate dance of emotions. There was an intensity in the way he watched me, a search for meaning in the ordinary actions of making breakfast, a search that resonated deeply with the quiet turmoil within me. After breakfast, the house seemed to hold its breath. I retreated to the calm of my room, trying to piece together the fragments of emotion that had surfaced so unexpectedly. The day wore on slowly, and every moment was touched by the echoes of that morning. I pondered the transformation that had taken place within us both, how the passage of time had not only changed our appearances but had also reshaped the landscape of our inner lives. As evening approached and the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the windows, the gentle tension of the day gave way to a familiar solitude. Yet now, that solitude was tinged with a hopeful promise. The memories of Adrien's thoughtful gaze and the quiet exchange of our unspoken words lingered in the air like a soft hymn, a reminder that even in the midst of loneliness, the bonds we share can spark a light in the darkness. Later that night, as I lay in bed with the silence enveloping me once again, I sensed a shift. My eyes fluttered open in the dim light as I noticed a subtle movement, a shadow slowly crossing the threshold of my room. It was Adrien, returning quietly through the slightly ajar door. His presence in that quiet moment felt less like a reminder of past uncertainties and more like an affirmation of the deep connection we had begun to rediscover. In the stillness of the night, with only the soft hum of the house as our companion, I realized that our relationship was evolving into something profound, a shared journey toward healing and understanding. There was no physical closeness to define our bond, rather, it was the emotional intimacy that had emerged, built on years of shared memories, loss, and the quiet hope that together we might find solace. I made a silent vow in that moment, to nurture the unspoken connection between us, to listen deeply to the silent calls of our hearts, and to allow the gentle moments of togetherness to guide us through the uncertainties of our lives. Though the night was long and filled with its own blend of melancholy and introspection, it also carried the promise of renewal, a promise that in our shared vulnerability, we might discover the strength to embrace the future with courage and compassion. Thus, in the soft glow of that night and the delicate unfolding of our emotions, I understood that our bond was a quiet testament to the power of love and understanding, a beacon that could light even the darkest of nights. Pounding my son in the middle of the night was in my room despite knowing I was supposed to be asleep. Adrien's eyes glinted in the darkness within. Intensity that reminded me of the night before. For a moment I tried to focus my gaze. What was I supposed to do? The confusion inside me grew louder and louder. Adrien being in my room at this hour was strange enough, but it also felt like some kind of echo, only this time it was different. His eyes, his demeanor, the way he stepped closer to me, it all carried meaning. Adrien took another step forward. He moved closer, and with the only light left in the room, the moonlight, I could see his face a little more clearly. His eyes were more determined than I'd ever seen them. Deep inside something screamed at me, "Don't stop it." But in that moment Adrien suddenly leaned in and pressed his lips against mine. It all happened in an instant. For a moment everything froze. Time stood still. In that instant it felt as if the world was spinning around me. But I was motionless, my son just a step away, and as he left a kiss on my lips, all my emote tangled together. This wasn't something a mother expects from her child. In that moment it made me feel as though my heart suddenly started pounding wildly. I quickly pulled away and tried to push him back. "Stop." "No," I said breathlessly. My words seemed to vanish into the air like a whisper. Adrien pulled back, leaving a trace of what seemed like disappointment in his eyes. But he still stood there, tall in the room. "Adrien, this isn't right. Don't do this." My voice trembled, my head spun, and my body was soaked in sweat. I couldn't control the feelings inside me. My son approaching me this way, how terrifying, how complicated it was. But on the other hand, I couldn't deny the attention, the focus he was giving me. But this wasn't right. I had to remain a mother forever. Right. The intense gaze in my son's eyes, a gaze I had never seen before, shook me deeply. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst, but I knew I had to pull myself together. Adrien took a step back. He remained silent without saying a word, but the silence grew deeper in the darkness. Then Adrien came closer and once again placed a kiss on my lips, his hands moving down from my neck, first to my waist, then to my hips. No matter how much I told myself to stop, I couldn't resist that night. Whatever happened had happened. I woke up in the morning trying to understand what transpired. Adrien wasn't beside me and I was alone in the room. I took a deep breath, trying to collect myself, left the house without saying a word. There was a weariness in my eyes, an emptiness in my chest. My steps felt heavy, like I was lost as I fought within myself. The only thing I knew for certain was that I needed to understand what had happened. I was questioning what I was feeling, but everything with each passing second seemed more and more complicated. That night, whatever happened had happened. By Nang, everything felt like a dream, so tangled. My eyes ached, my heart was racing. But I left the house without saying a word. I tried to cover up what had happened between Adrien and me. As I struggled to understand, I decided to suppress all my emotions, to erase it all. But something inside me was breaking. I was questioning myself. Why did I feel so mixed up? I felt like I was lost in this chaos. My son was no longer just a